What are you doing in your singleness? Today we're going to look at the 5 things you need to start and the 5 things you need to stop doing in your singleness today. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Singleness is actually a lifetime calling for some, but for many of us, it's actually just a season that we're going to pass through. I used to tell myself, in this season, I'm just going to wait until I find a life partner to be able to do the next things I want to do. For example, I'm going to wait for a life partner till I go overseas, or I'm going to wait for a life partner to start this ministry that I'm really passionate about. And if I had done that, I would have actually put my life on pause for the past 4 years. I wouldn't have taken the opportunities that came to me, and I wouldn't have been able to grow as a person or even to help build the kingdom like I have. And I believe all of us in our singleness have a purpose to fulfill and to steward the things that God has called us to do. And we're going to be talking about what we can do in this video today. If we look at the book of Ruth, we see a woman who understood her purpose in the season that she was in, and she didn't just sit around, but she actually took action as well. In Ruth chapter 2, verses 2-3, it says, "One day Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, 'Let me go out into the harvest fields to pick up the stalks of grain left behind by anyone who is kind enough to let me do it.' Naomi replied, 'All right, my daughter, go ahead.' So Ruth went out to gather the grain behind the harvesters. And as it happened, she found herself working in a field that belonged to Boaz, the relative of her father-in-law, Elimelech." The context of Ruth is that she had a husband in the previous chapter, but then he passed away. So in this chapter, we actually see her transition from a wife to a widow. But the thing is, Ruth doesn't just wait around for another husband to come along to start providing for her. Instead, she actually is proactive and she actually goes out into the harvest field and she starts to collect grain to provide for both her mother-in-law and herself. What we can learn from Ruth is that we should be proactive in our singleness today. We don't need to wait for a life partner to come along to start doing the things that God has called us to do. God's given us so many opportunities and so many resources and time to do these things. And these are 5 ways that we can start to use our singleness well today. Number 1 is grow your relationship with God. It's actually the perfect season because there's less distractions and you're able to give God your undivided attention and devotion to Him in order to grow your intimacy and your personal relationship. It's really important because that allows you to build a great foundation for all areas of your life to be anchored in Him. And it's really important that in this time you also understand what your calling and what your purpose is in God as well. Because once you find that out, you will know where God wants to lead you in life. And if you end up having a life partner, you also want to make sure that those paths align so that you're able to serve God's kingdom together. There are lots of different practical ways that you can build your relationship with God. And one of the ways that I find most helpful is just even by taking walks in nature and also by listening to worship music and reading His Word. There are actually something called the spiritual pathways, which you can actually discover what's the best way that you feel connected to God. And you can also use that to help you to grow your relationship with Him. Number 2 is to invest in yourself. Take the time to start new hobbies and to just explore things that you felt like maybe you were too late to do. So for example, I took up running and I also took up learning how to play the keyboard. And it's just been really good for my own mental health and my own well-being in able to just do things that I can enjoy in my time as a single person. Number 3 is to invest in relationships, whether that be your family, your friends, your life group, or your community. It's really important to have healthy relationships in your life. We were never designed to do life alone, and often in singleness, it can actually feel quite lonely. So to surround yourself with people who will love and care and support you is really critical in this season. Number 4 is to disciple someone. We don't want to just look at who's pouring into our life, but whose life we can pour into. Jesus calls us to make disciples of all nations, and that's the greatest calling that we have as followers of Christ. So as we disciple and mentor people and we walk with people in life, we're able to help each other grow and edify one another. Number 5 is to serve in a ministry. When we go to church, we shouldn't have the mindset that we're just consumers and we're there to receive, but we should also be there to actually build the kingdom and to actually give as well. When we serve other people, we also learn humility, we also learn sacrifice, which obviously isn't the easiest thing to do, but as we learn selflessness, we become better people, more like Christ, and it's also a really good training ground for marriage as well. But aside from doing these things, there are also some things that we need to stop doing because they're holding us back in our singleness. Number 1 is give yourself deadlines. We often work towards timelines that we think that we feel like we should be meeting at a certain point in our life. Like for example, by 25 we should be married, by 30 we should have kids, and when we put put those expectations on ourselves, they're often unmet and they often can lead to disappointment as well. So instead of trusting in our own timeline, we need to make sure that we trust in God's timeline. And the hard thing about that is that we often don't know what God's timeline actually looks like, but that's where faith comes in. Number 2 is constant comparison. I know I've said it before, but comparison really is the thief of joy. And today it's so easy to just compare yourself to all these people on Instagram, on social media, people that you meet face to face. And we need to start learning to shift away from comparing ourselves and rather being grateful for what we do have, so then at least we can actually enjoy the singleness that God has placed us in. Number 3 of what not to do is to lower your standards. You know, singleness can often feel like a waiting game, and in that waiting it's really easy to become impatient. But one thing that we need to remember is that choosing a life partner isn't something to be taken lightly. My pastor said to me, I am interested, but I'm not desperate. I am available, but not cheap. I am the chooser and not just the chosen. And it's really important that as we choose someone, because it is literally such a big life decision, that we don't compromise our values or lower our standards. Lastly, don't hold yourself back. It comes back to pretty much everything that we talked about in this video. Remember, there are so many things that you can do in this time, and make sure you use all the opportunities that God has given you to actually use your singleness well. At the end of the day, I'm not guaranteed marriage, and that means that if I was just to wait for a life partner, I could literally be waiting the rest of my life and wasting my life away. You know, whether singleness is a seasonal thing or it's a lifetime calling for you, we're all called to steward our singleness well. So I hope you found this video useful, and let me know how you're using your singleness in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to Salt's YouTube channel for more videos on singleness, dating and relationships.